And now we'll hear from Vice Mayor Surlene Grant.
Good afternoon. As many of you know, the City Council annually, some members of the City Council, we take a trip to Washington, D.C. to lobby on behalf of the city for different things that we need. And we make this trip in March. So I want to relay to you my experiences from last March and how they tie into what we're doing today. It was really a chance meeting. We were sitting in Senator Feinstein's office when there was a gentleman there, I'm sorry, Senator Barbara Boxer's office actually, when there was a gentleman there, and he leaned over, and we were all waiting for our few minutes with her, and he says, "Where are you from?" And I said, "San Leandro." And he began to tell me things about San Leandro. You know, San Leandro, in the greater scheme of things, is really just a small dot on the map. So I said, well, why do you know about San Leandro? And it turned out that this gentleman, his name was Marvin Winters, and he was the operations officer for what's an organization called United Warrior Survivor Foundation. And what they do is they provide aid to families and soldiers who have been injured in the war. And what he shared with me, after I've met him, I then began an email correspondence with him. What he shared with me was that last March, April 2006, there were 110 combat wounded individuals living in San Leandro. These individuals had been wounded from the war from September 11 to 2001. So that meant in that 5-year span, there were 110 people in our community that had been injured. And that does not take in the number of family members, children, spouses, parents, and others who are also impacted. And I found out that of that 110, 16 of those individuals were married, and 11 had children, and 75 of them were originally from San Leandro when they enlisted. Well, as a community leader here, you know, those impacts of one of those individuals has on our community service needs is great, because it could go from something as simple as curb cuts to something more important as emergency response or the availability of care. So there's an emotional, financial, and other support that the family members need, but it's a hidden population to us. So it makes sense in this era of thinking globally and acting locally that this global action, such as this war on terrorism, would have local consequences, and these war-wounded individuals in our community demonstrate that in a real way. The survivors and their families demonstrate that regardless of our political views about all of this, there's a cost to the community, and there's cost to families, and for sure there's a cost to these individuals. The United States is spending millions upon millions with this war. This causes us as government leaders to have to cut spending on other social needs, including the services to veterans. That's the irony of the whole thing. We are fighting in a war, and survivors with needs from counseling to 24-hour care are returning home, and because of the administration, we are cutting services, even on the local level. Furthermore, the percentage of those returning home with more serious kinds of injuries and needs are higher than in previous wars due to the marvels of modern medicine. People are returning back as double and quadruple amputees. Mr. Winters shared with me. Last year in San Leandro community, 30 of those who returned home had severe injuries, 8 having lost limbs, 10 who were burn victims, 7 who were injured or disabled with impact wounds, and 5 with brain injuries. So, just as my father and my grandfather and a number of those before have said, the cost of freedom ain't free. I most frequently think of that, especially on a day like today, on Martin Luther King's birthday, in the context of civil rights movement, freedom riders, abolitionists, and others who fought for my freedom from the historical shackles of slavery and disenfranchisement in the United States. But a contemporary war like the one we're fighting now on foreign soil, fought in the name of all of us who live here, has its costs. And as a community, it's a debt in the lives of hundreds of young men and women. And in my opinion, it's a debt that the checking account has insufficient funds to pay, and the interest rate is rising annually. And it's a debt that we will never, ever fully repay, both figuratively and literally.